In a Simpsons episode, Homer starts a successful snow ploughing business called Mr. Plow. Many of you will remember this one. Soon after, his drinking buddy Barney starts a rival business, the Plough King. And look, long story short, after a long battle, they decide to join forces and become the greatest ploughing team ever known. And the episode finishes with Homer and Barney outside on a snowy field, boasting. When two best friends work together, not even God himself can stop them. Then, the clouds part, a voice from heaven speaks, "Oh yeah?" The sun comes out, and the snow begins to melt. And whilst The Simpsons may not be the best place to turn for theological education, I think this particular scene wonderfully illustrates the words of James in our passage today. James 4, verses 13 to 17 tell us this. "Now listen, you who say, 'Today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city and spend a year there, carry on business and make money.' Why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, 'If it is the Lord's will, we will live or do this and that.' As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone, then, knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's a sin for them." In this passage, James is reminding us of our complete and utter reliance on God. God is all-knowing and he is all-powerful. And because of these attributes, we simply can't boast about our plans or our future. Our plans are all at the mercy of God. We're instructed by James not to make boasts about our future, but instead to be humble to God and bow before his will and direction. We're told in verse 15 to say, "If it is the Lord's will, we will do this or that." This doesn't mean we have to tokenistically say, "Lord willing," at the end of every thought or idea for our future. But what it does mean is to plan our future with God in mind, holding on to your own plans loosely and being open to God's direction and any changes that he may throw your way. Why? Well, James tells us in verse 14 that our lives are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. This sentiment is in line with the Old Testament wisdom, isn't it? The book of Ecclesiastes tells us constantly that life is meaningless. A Hebrew word, havel, which means mist or vapor. The book of Ecclesiastes reminds us this over and over. It's here one minute, it's gone the next. It's unable to be grasped or contained or made sense of. And Proverbs tells us to hold our plans loosely, regularly, right? Look at Proverbs 16 verse 9, for example. "In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." We can plan whatever we want, and planning is good and wise, but it is up to God where things go. We are to make plans, but understanding that we are not captain. We are not in charge. We are to rely and depend on God in all we do. And if we don't, we're guilty of sin. James says it straight out in verse 17. "If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them." This is telling us that if we know that God is all-powerful, sovereign and in charge, as we claim as Christians, but we refuse to rely on him, we're sinning. Our plans are at the mercy of God, and 2020 has shown us that. I'm sure at the beginning of this year, many of us said, "This year I'll do this or that, or I'll plan to go here or there, or I'll travel to this place or that place, I will earn this or sell that or buy what." The pandemic has derailed your plans, our church's plans, our family's plans, and the plans of big businesses and powerful governments. And for us in the West, so used to being in control and enjoying stability, it's been a hard pill to swallow. This is not what we're used to, is it? But maybe this can be an opportunity for us to be rebuked of our self-reliance and fall back into the safe and powerful arms of God. And this is more than just consolation. It's actually a return to what we confess when we come to Jesus as a sinner in need of salvation. It's a recognition of our helplessness and an appeal to his mercy and grace on our behalf. And we can trust him. Romans 8:28, hear it all the time. It says this, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. In all things. So don't post about your plans, but rely on God. How can we practically apply this when making plans? Well, here's a suggestion. I think firstly, we need to make our plans in line with God's revealed will in the Bible. Never plan anything outside of God's moral compass and ethical framework that he provides for us. That's sort of a no-brainer, but we should always plan with that in mind. But then there's the unknown, unrevealed will of God. And how do we know this? Well, as Daniel told us a few weeks ago in his sermon on decision making, we are to know God well. We are to regularly be in the Word and prayer, to be intimate and close with God, so that when decisions come up that aren't specified in his Word, we are so close and so tight and so intimately connected with God through his indwelling Spirit that we are going to be led towards making the right decisions. And we're to pray. Pray that we make the right decisions. Pray that we honour God with our decisions. And pray, literally give our decisions and our plans over to God, saying, God, I want to do this. I plan to do that. I feel it's the right thing to do, but it's in your hands. And we want to hold on to those plans loosely. Be prepared for them to change, trusting and knowing that God only gives good gifts to his children. Your life is a mist. But to our all-knowing God, our lives are planned and lovingly and carefully curated to lead us to become more like Christ. So trust in him with all you have. God bless.